Rod, for those viewing at home and also when they see the video.
That's what happens when you're gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So Rod, so those viewing at home and anyone looking at the video, we're having some issues with our camera. The presentation will appear fine, as will the flag and the four-way test, but we're working on the actual camera video right now.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Jim Young.
Again, good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to our Rotary Club this morning. Let us pray. Gracious God, as we gather together as Rotarians and friends, we acknowledge that wherever we go, we are always in your presence. We pray that our actions may reflect the awareness as we seek your nearness and as we count our many blessings. Help us to live our lives so that we may enhance the future of those lives we touch. May your spirits guide us all of our days. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. And lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Bill McClure.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Number one, is it truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendship? Number four, will be beneficial to all concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And we have one guest with us today, Dave Zerl, who's a guest of Tom Tobin. And there'll be no song today because I am not going to lead it. And our president, Father Joe Boisel.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. A couple of announcements this morning. Well, first thing I should tell you is that I feel a bit disheveled. I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning. I usually wake up between 5 and 6. And so there I was awake, and I do what I do. Normally I make some coffee, and then I play Wordle, and then I read the Wall Street Journal, all on my phone. And I made it quickly through Wordle this morning, and I'm reading the journal. I kind of read through most of it, and I'm thinking, well, I think I'm gonna go for a run. And then I look at my watch. I'm like, it's 7 o'clock. I've got to get to Rotary. And oh well. So that's sort of my morning this morning. It'd have been hilarious if you'd have driven by and I was out just jogging through the neighborhood, wouldn't it? A couple of things. Board of Directors meets immediately following this meeting, which I had the agenda for, so I should have remembered. So if you are a board member, please plan to be here or plan to stay. If you would just like to sit in, you're welcome to do that as well. For those who are not board members. Another announcement is that on the 28th of June, we are going to have this is a fortnight away from today. We will not meet in the morning. We will meet in the evening, 6 p.m. at the Country Club of Hudson. We'll have a dinner. The cost is only $45, so it's a pretty affordable dinner. It's members plus one. Am I remembering that right? Yes, you can bring your spouse or your date. Don't bring both, and come. But so that's the 28th of June. You heard that old Irish toast to my wife and lover. May they never meet. Yeah, something like that. On the 28th Yeah, and then one other thing I have is there's a sign up sheet, by the way, coming around for that dinner. So please do sign up and stick it in your calendar and plan to be there. It is our changing of the guard dinner. I received a note from Gabrielle Henslick, I think is how you say her name. Is that right? Anybody know? Anyway, Gabrielle was one of the scholarship award winners, and she sent us this very beautiful card that I managed to mangle as I got it out of there. It was all tied up in a ribbon, and it says, "Dear Rotary Club members, thank you for the scholarship award. I truly appreciate your financial support. I'm so excited about going to Miami in the fall. Thanks again for supporting me." And Gabrielle signs it. So very lovely card. Yes. Would you like to come read it? Yeah, that's what I said. From Katie Babinski? Am I doing that right? Okay. And she writes, "Dear Rotary, thank you for taking the time to consider me and award me that with this scholarship. I feel so blessed to have been chosen. I know this will help a ton in financing my college education." And she signs, "Thank you, Katie." So indeed, nice to see the gratitude return. Rich, you have an announcement to make, don't you? Oh, just take your time. There's no hurry. We're just sitting around waiting on you. I've been married 34 years, and I feel like a goodly amount of that time I have spent waiting. And I always tell my wife, when you're important, people will wait. And they will. You, on the other hand, Rich Warfield.
Okay. Thank you, Father Joe, for allowing me to speak. This last Saturday, Joe Avella, Kelly Brennan, Patrick, myself, missing somebody here, Marilyn, and her grandchildren. There you are. Your grandchildren. One other. Anyway, so I'd like to thank, I'm sorry, Andy. He's not here. That's why I couldn't find him. He's up above. And Andy Morris, we cleaned the pool house. I don't know, this is like our 10th, 11th, 12th straight year of doing it. And I'd like to thank them for participating. And Marilyn, for your two kids, or your three grandchildren, excuse me, three. I couldn't count them all. They were very disciplined. I guess Marilyn promised them $10 each for coming to clean the lockers. So nobody wanted to clean. And Joe Avell was stuck on locker duty too, amongst other things. So that's his favorite thing to do. But I'd like to thank all the men and women that participated for your time and effort.
All right. And now Tom Tobin's going to come and introduce our guests.
Good morning, Rotarians. I am very pleased to introduce Mr. Dana Addis. He's currently completing his first school year as superintendent of our Hudson City Schools. He was hired in the spring of 2022 after a rigorous process to find the district's new leader. And I think James and David and I agree it was a rigorous process. Previously, Dana served as superintendent of Norton City Schools for 5 years. Prior to that time, he served as principal of Highland High School in Medina for 6 years. He's been an assistant principal at Strongsville and an athletic director in Copley also. Mr. Addis began his educational career as an English teacher at Copley High School back in 1994, where he also served as head basketball coach. Dana facilitates an aspiring students cohort through the Summit County Educational Service Center. He is a member of the Northeast Ohio Dream Team Innovation Leadership Team and a graduate of the Ohio School Leadership Institute program, a collaborative effort of state superintendents. Mr. Addis is an active member of the Buckeye Association of School Administrators and the School Superintendents Association. He earned his bachelor's degree in education and a Bachelor's of Arts in Telecommunications from Kent State University, and his master's degree in Educational Administration from the University of Akron. An avid fan of all Cleveland, and I'm going to add here Hudson sports teams, Mr. Addis enjoys attending sporting events. He and his wife Laura have been married for 25 years under the proud parents of 3 grown children. If I may introduce to you, Dana Addis.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. Hey, good morning. Great to see you. I hope it's okay if I walk around a little bit. I know that we have a slide presentation that's going to be up here. And I'm actually just planning on talking about our safety forum that we presented in February. What's unusual about listening to a bio of yourself is it takes me back to when I first started teaching. I got invited to a card game from all of the veteran men. It was like a men's penny poker game. And so I'll never forget that night they brought out a cake to celebrate one of the person's birthdays, and they were celebrating his 40th birthday. And I sat there as a 25-year-old and thought, why I'm hanging out with 40-year-old people? Like, how old is this guy? And I have just blown past that. So I used to be this young educator that would go to people all of the time and ask for advice. And I want to be good at this profession. And all of a sudden I've turned into this, somehow this veteran educator that gets to come and talk. And you know, the young people will often come to me and ask for some thoughts as well. So thanks to Mr. Tobin, and I know Mr. Zero and Mr. Field are here. They were an important part of the process of bringing me here. It was rigorous. I think the application started in December, and the job offer came St. Patrick's Day at 12:05 a.m. But it was well worth it. We're really coming off a good year in Hudson. And I always want to tell people, people use this phrase, kids these days. And I want you to know our kids are amazing kids. They have the same dreams and aspirations that we had when we were in high school. Their world is much different. They have different things that they have to deal with, but they, as kids, they are fantastic human beings and have dreams and visions of going out and changing this world. So I want you to trust that knowledge. And if you really want to get to know the kids, get engaged in our schools, and I know some of you are, get to know them. Don't rely on what you hear about schools and kids these days, because it's exactly the opposite. As school districts, we are actually doing more than we've ever had to do. You know, when I went to school, it was, you just went to school. We are now more concerned about the health and welfare of kids than ever before. And in areas where we need to be, we are better as educators than ever before in my 31 years. There are actually some areas where we are getting really, really good at what we do. And so I'm really proud to be an educator. Tom mentioned a degree in telecommunications. I started out with a degree in TV and radio production from Kent State because I wanted to be the next Joe Tate. I wanted to call the Cavs games. He was my childhood hero. I just couldn't find work. And quite frankly, just did some freelance and then started coaching and hanging around kids. And then I thought, this is what I want to do. So I went back and got my teaching degree and have no regrets. But thanks for having me. I don't come to events with an actual agenda. And so I'm just going to go through the safety forum just to show you some of the things that we are doing as a district. I want you to know, and I'm not telling you this to scare you by any stretch of the imagination. Part of the plan with schools these days and safety is, if something happens and we're really in a crisis situation, which, by the way, there's really nothing that any school district can do to totally avoid a crisis. We just can't. We can't come to our community and say that's never going to happen in our school buildings. We have locked vestibules. We have student resource officers. We have an amazing relationship with our police department. we're working as a school district that if someone wants to come to a school building and get in, they likely are. It's just what plan is in place that once that happens, that person is going to leave there without really impacting life too much. That's the goal. And so we'll talk a little bit about this. I'm working with Noah today. We're going to go through this. So Noah, go ahead and do the next. We have a student and staff safety advisory committee, or a staff and parent safety advisory committee, about 60 people in our school district that meet throughout the school year just to talk about safety items. This is my 6th district. No district has had this type of safety committee. So when we tell our community, and I tell all of you how important safety is, these are 60 people that dedicate their time and part of their life to ensure the safety of our students. So this year we had a safety forum. It was well attended, and I wasn't a big part of that. I just introduced people. So for me to say we knocked it out of the park, I'm not telling you about something that I did. I'm telling you something that the committee did, and they knocked it out of the park that night. This is the presentation. So we just talked about these particular things. We had 3 areas, just our mental health supports and resources, our lockdown drill procedures, and then the coordinated response and communication with Chief Tabak. And I know he's been here. He stole the show that night, just in terms of giving our people peace of mind that if something happens, this is what occurs. For instance, I can't, as a superintendent, tell parents if we're in an emergency situation, please don't come to the schools. They're going to say, sorry, I'm getting in my car and I'm driving there and you're not going to stop me. The police chief can say that, and it has a little more weight. And he did that night. Things like that really helped our process. So we'll talk about all 3 of these and make our way through. And then most importantly, I would love to answer any questions that you have about safety. All right, go ahead, Noah. So you hear a lot about mental health supports and resources. And I want to tell you something that happens in my world. I'll get something from time to time that will just say, can't we just get back to teaching and learning? Can't we just do that? And I would share this with you. We are teaching and learning. This year's senior class, $6 million in scholarship money. We have 2 West Point appointments, Virginia Military Institute, Ohio State, Harvard, Stanford, Yale. We are getting it done. So when you hear about how hard we are working on the mental health of our students, that's not at the sacrifice of our academics. Our academics, we're a top 10 school district in the state of Ohio academically. We have 5 national merit finalists. That's the top 1% on the SAT, top 1% in the entire United States. And we have those kids here. We had 7 perfect ACT scores, 36s. So we are getting it done academically. I don't want you to think because schools are working harder in this area that we are sacrificing other things. We are not. We're just doing more. So our school counselors, our school psychologists, I just wanted you to see all of the mental health and supports that are in school districts now. This has every single thing to do with student safety. This is all about student safety. Maybe you've heard these words from an old coach or an old teacher, or my dad, who grew up in Southern Ohio, and he was a tough son of a gun. You know, he would tell me things like, use your head for something besides a hat rack. But he would also say, toughen up, like toughen up, clean up and get back out there. Like old school days are done. And so when we talk about having these people for our kids, I would share this with you. This is the way that it should be. Maybe 20, 25 years ago, we lost students because we weren't there to listen to what they were experiencing. We are listening to them now. Here's one of my favorites. Maybe you had a kid in school who just couldn't behave. And so he or she was getting kicked out of school all of the time or sent to the hallway. You know what happens when kids get kicked out of school or get sent to the hallway? They don't learn. So they're already behind. They don't know how to do school, and we are kicking them out of school. We're so much better in this area now at figuring out what is it that we can do to help them so they can stay in school. A key worker or a key one, all of these are so important. 3 clinical counselors are because they can really assess what's going on with a kid. But the social worker in a school district, critical and crucial, because the social worker has connections that I don't as an educator. A social worker knows people that really can dive in to the safety issues that a student is experiencing. All right, next, Noah. By the way, I'm a former English teacher and basketball coach. So I'm not afraid to talk. And I actually had an assistant coach who used to do this to me when he told me, all right, like that's enough. So James, that's your responsibility this morning. All right. Yeah, and Tom's in front, so you got me covered. So here just are some different district supports. And this is a beautiful safety issue for schools these days. We are not just by ourselves. We have so much community support and support services. We have a board certified behavior analyst. We work with minority behavior health group. Like, people are just really caring about kids. And I'll just touch upon this briefly. I don't know if you realize this, but kids are doing things later in life now than they ever have before. Kids are not getting their driver's license at 16 as often as before. This may sound like a shock to you. Kids are not drinking until later in life. I can't say that about everything. I can't say that about marijuana, or I can't say that about vapes, but some of the staples, dating is really being put off till kids are older. And one of the things this is the result of being on phones and social media or gaming. They're not getting out of their houses enough. And so there's an element of loneliness that's there because kids aren't getting out and playing kick the can or wiffle ball or running around the street much anymore. And that leads to some safety issues internally for students. So we're working to help them. Next, Noah. All right, so here are just the 4 groups of people that really are designed for student safety: the social workers, the school psychologists, the clinical counselors, and the counselors. All of you, you're very aware of the school counselor role. Maybe your understanding of it is this is the person who helps the student get into college or get into a career tech field or get into the workforce, get into the armed forces. That's true. I want you to know these other 3 elements are really a part of students' lives anymore, and they're fairly new. And they are all based on the safety of the student, just listening and helping these kids in whatever areas they need. Next, Noah. All right, this is really, really important. I want you to take a couple things out of today, but I think if you as a listener and wanting to know about the safety in school districts could understand the different tiers of support. Tier 1 really is me as a teacher understanding, if Joe's acting up in class today, me as a teacher understanding, and it seems like he's likely to be someone who would act up in class. So me just understanding techniques and things that I can say to him to help get him back on course. And it's so different than, Joe, you need to get up and get out into the hallway, or I'm kicking him out of school. What can I do? What techniques can I use to keep Joe on task in the room, and to recognize that I have 30 different kids that are sitting in my room right now. I need to help every single one of them. This isn't anymore about not speaking up in class or not acting out. It is everyone has these different needs. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 is when the work that I am doing as an educator really isn't helping a student who's struggling behaviorally, and they need additional supports. And so that is a team of school psychologists, teacher, could be a building level administrator that just guide this person into where they need to go, working with the families as well. And then tier 3 would be significant additional supports. So you could be looking at, psych services, clinical psych services, outside support services. We have recognized in the safety area, we can only do so much for kids. I'm a teacher, coach, administrator. I'm not a behavior analyst. I can try and work with a kid to be a quote unquote a little bit better and learn how to listen, give them some listening skills. But I can't know we have a student who has some issues here that we really need to help them with. So that's tier 3. All of those are a part of our world now. Next, Noah. So these are just all of the tier 1 supports. We're going to move through some of these quickly. All right, go ahead. That's tier 1. You see all these, and here are some of the tier 2, like the social worker, great connection, collaboration with families. And then here are go ahead, Noah. Thank you. So here are some of the big ones, like the last bullet, intensive individual behavior plans. That is a part of a student's safety net in schools these days because we want them here. Now, every once in a while, a school superintendent will have to expel a student for the safety of other students in that building. It happens. But I will share this with you. If you hear the phrase, this kid needs to be out of school, that's doing nothing for that student, just so you know. There is no research that would support an expulsion from school as something that teaches that kid a lesson. It doesn't. It puts them further behind the 8 ball. And if we want to help a student climb out of things, expelling them or kicking them out of school isn't the way of doing it. It's an old school way. Like, you've lost this right. There's that element to it. And we do it from time to time when we do believe there's a true danger, but we have 4,700 kids in our school district. Excuse me. So sometimes, not sometimes, all of the time, they are the priority. But we are getting better at bringing that student. We do threat assessments, thorough threat assessments with the student and a clinical counselor, and sometimes our local police force to determine this student is struggling right now, but they are not a threat to our school. And kids say things these days that are tough to deal with, but they don't always mean them. And that is our job to determine this student belongs here. Yeah, they opened up their mouth in a way that was really inappropriate, but we do a threat assessment. We meet with families. They need to be back in our building. All right. Thanks, Noah. School counselor role, go ahead and go through that. I want to get to some other things quickly. Keep going. They talked about all of these. I wanted you guys to know that this was part of the presentation. All right. So we just told our community, this is the role of the school counselor. Go ahead, Noah. Just some things. Go back for a second. Student voices. So here's when we're talking about student safety, and that's why we're here today, school safety. One of the things we're really trying to equip our kids with is something that I would think all of you guys would like. And that is some old school grit, like fight through it, learn how to deal with it. Today, we call them coping strategies. So when I'm a student and I'm in trouble and I'm struggling in this room or I'm struggling academically, what can I use? What can I learn to do to help myself get through it? And I know some of you have family members in our school district. You'll hear them talk about how challenging the academics can be. You know, they have 4 AP classes or they have a test or whatever it is. What we try and do is we get them to the edge of academic challenges, but we never let them go over. It's healthy for them to be tested and to test their mettle and to test their grit. They grow from that. So every once in a while, we will see these things from the kids. When something doesn't feel right, I need to let a trusted adult know. So you read all of the time about the school shootings, and they're only happening in our country. It's really a tough thing to deal with. But here's one thing that we do know about these school shootings. These are people, I'm saying 98, 99% of the time, that have been screaming out to other people that they're not right. And they feel this particular way, but they get ignored because they're seen as different. They're not liked. They don't have any friends, but they'll post something. So we actually have a program called See Something, Say Something. And it's saved us. I won't say that it saved us from a tragedy, but we have gotten to kids and helped kids because other kids step up and say something. We had an incident this year where it really helped us get to the bottom of something because someone saw something and they spoke up. That's what's different, is we are really being vocal and open and honest with our kids that if you're not feeling right or if something is happening from a safety standpoint, speak up, and they do. Okay, go ahead, Noah. Clinical counselor, let's go through these a little bit. Go ahead, thank you. I think we're through. Okay, I want to talk about bullying for just a second because you hear that word all of the time. If Tom says to me, and this H gets crooked a lot. If Tom says, you know, Dana, every time I look at you, the H is crooked on your lapel. We're really, these days, every time someone says something, quote unquote, mean to one another, we label it as bullying. You need to understand as a citizen, as someone who hears that word, bullying is incessant behavior. It is repeated behavior. It is not an inappropriate or mean comment. So we have so many ways to help our kids with this. How many of you believe bullying occurred when you were in school? Raise your hand. Okay, so it's 2023. It's still happening, and it's going to be happening in 2030 and 2040. It's not going to go away. So one of the new trends is to equip all of us how to handle it when someone bullies us. Instead of hiding, going into a corner, we tell an adult. Or we learn how to realize that person who's doing it is really the person with the problem, not me. I'm not the person with the problem. So we're working on continued techniques in order to help our kids. Okay, go ahead, Noah. That's bullying. This was Jamie Gantz, who's one of our, this is good right here. I talked a little bit about the threat assessment. If we feel like a student is a danger to one of our school buildings, he or she attends our building, there's something there, something's been said, something's been written that we do not like, we put this student into a threat assessment. It's required. I will share with you that as the building principal at Highland and as the superintendent at Norton, some of our parents or some of our students would refuse to go through a threat assessment, and they would not return to school until they would go through it. So that was when it was really starting. It's pretty common right now for this to occur, and our families are very accepting of it because they want to know if their child is really truly internally struggling and if they are a threat. So we ask a lot of different questions in this threat assessment, like, you know, one of the questions that we'll ask is, are there guns in the house and do they have access to the guns? And so just part of that for us to understand. Okay, go ahead, Noah. All right, let's keep going. I just want to get to the last thing because I feel like, are we getting close on time? We're okay? Okay, how much time? Perfect. All right. So if you ever hear of the word lockdown in a school, and maybe this won't come your way unless you have family members in our schools, we are more well equipped than ever before to thwart off an intruder with the lockdowns. We have devices on all of our doors in our classrooms that if that door is locked, that intruder is not getting in. We have in our new middle school, and thank you for your support of that. It's an absolutely fantastic building for learning purposes more than anything else. It's an incredible place for our students to learn. It is the most active, energized, academic student-based school building I've ever been in 31 years. It is an incredible place, but it is also a place of safety. With the press of a button, our students are isolated from the rest of the building. So if there's an intruder, we have, within seconds, we have compartment walls that come down that person is not going to get into. So that's where we've gone with safety lockdowns. No student has ever been killed in an American school, or I don't even know if it's in the world, when behind a locked door. So we're working really hard in that area. That's an important thing for you to note today. When these tragedies happen, it's not necessarily the mistake of a school district. It's a really rough timing thing, an exchange of classes, sometimes, playground or after school. But when students are and can get to a locked room instantly, they are safe. So that's really one of the things that we focus on, is how quickly can we get our students into a room and are the doors locked? After the incident in Florida, I want to say in 16 or 17, that rocked everyone's world. Locked doors in Ohio were a requirement in the classroom. I know now our doors are always locked to the point where all we need to do is shut them and they're locked. There's no fumbling with keys or anything. That's where you can really get into a messy situation. Yeah. Yeah, we have barricades on every single door in our school district. And, we had bolo sticks at Norton. That was a little orange pin. We drilled a hole in the wall. It was a thick metal piece. It's amazing that we've had to do this with schools, isn't it? So we drilled a hole in the floor. The bolo stick was attached to the door, and all you had to do was push it down in. And the safety services, it would take them 20 to 25 minutes to break the door down. It's just not coming down. And so by then, help is there. So, and we know the minds of these intruders, they move on from a locked door. They check a locked door. They don't spend a lot of time there, and then they move on. And they are struggling internally in that situation with what to do next. They're not in a good place. They're not in a right place. So the goal is create as much confusion in their world as possible to protect your kids. And a locked door does that. We have surveillance systems in our schools now. We have over 100 cameras in our high school. And our PA system can tell people where this intruder is. They're at the C wing or the D wing, and these voices that are coming down lead to confusion to this person. So we try and do whatever we can just to thwart this. All right, so those are the lockdowns. I want you to know also, every once in a while, we have an instructional lockdown. We have a student with diabetes who passes out in the hallway right before the bell's about to ring. So we'll go into instructional lockdown, keep going. We have the EMS there, the student is taken care of, and then we're out of instructional lockdown and back to teaching and learning. So that's part of it too. Okay, let's keep going. Keep going. That's the barricade device we just talked about. And then this was Chief Tabek with the Hudson Police Department. Go back, go to the SROs. I'm sorry. Go forward. I said go back and I meant go forward. Listen to what I mean, not what I say, Noah. Yeah, read my mind. Yeah, he did. Yeah. So we are really fortunate in Hudson. We are embarking upon gathering of our third student resource officer in the district. We have two that are fully funded by the city of Hudson. Officer Joe and Officer Matt. And they will be located. We've had two for 5 buildings, so they kind of go all over the place. Our middle school kids and our high school kids really need these people from a personal safety standpoint. A student will tell a police officer something that they would never tell an educator. They will confide in them and tell them something about their own life that they wouldn't tell their school counselor. There's just this magical thing about a police officer getting to know a student and that student knowing I can trust this person, and that helps that kid. So we have our third coming in the fall. This one is funded from operation funds, but we listened to our community. This came from a recommendation from our community to please bring in an additional SRO. We did a pretty thorough study. Chief Tabak, in looking out for our district and our finances, felt like the perfect number was 3. Chief could have easily said, you have 5 buildings, have 1 in each, but he thought it was a little bit of overkill, and I would agree. So with as close as the police department is, how active they are around our building. So we're excited for that third. This is really about getting to know our kids, and it's also letting people know we are well equipped with safety forces in our school district. An SRO will not stop an intruder from coming to the front door. But an SRO will help a student who's struggling, who might think about coming back and doing some damage in that school building. And the SRO who's in a building is able to defend that building right then and there. So we're really proud of this program, and thank you for any support, even if it's verbal support of the SROs being a part of our students' lives. We deeply appreciate that. They are key people to our kids. You know, the kids may know who I am because we're out there. They know Mike Miller, our building principal. They know me, my name. They know our resource officers as people and as human beings. Really important role. All right, Noah. So Chief Tabak just came in and he talked to our parents about some of these uncomfortable conversations, like if there's an emergency, if we have an intruder at our high school building and we have 100 cars pulling up, that's going to create chaos that's really not going to help your child or our school district. We had a fake phone call in November this year. It happened in 16 different districts at the same exact time. It was a telecall through a computer program. So 16 districts got the call at the same time that someone was coming to shoot the school building up. So we went into lockdown. Within 5 minutes, our police department knew it was a scam. But here's why I'm telling you this. Our kids got on their phones and started texting their parents instantly. Hey, we're in a lockdown. We're in a lockdown. And so it created a little bit of panic. And then those people contact us and say, hey, we're in a lockdown. Why aren't you telling us that we're in a lockdown? And that creates a safety issue. It creates a panic safety issue. We're really working on the trust of our people. We will tell you when it's necessary. We knew within 5 minutes this was a scam. So it does us no good to contact everyone in Hudson to say, by the way, we're in the middle of a lockdown and we're not worried about it at all. That doesn't do us any good. So he talked about that. Leave your kids alone. Trust the people who are in the school building. Don't text them back. Let them focus on what's happening there and not come into the schools. All right, Noah, thank you. Chief talked about active shooter a little bit. Go ahead, Noah. We're going to move through these quickly. So the Hudson Police Department, he just talked to basically what they go through. We just had an incident involving a middle school student probably 3 weeks ago. And this is how closely we work on safety issues with our police department. Perry is really strong at his work. He's really collaborative and works well and is a friendly person. But when it comes to his work and the work they have to do, he's really strong. I'm getting antsy. I want to release something. I'm informing the board, hey, we're in the middle of something right here. We knew we had everything under control, but the press release, he wanted it to be his. for peace of mind purposes for our entire community. So Dana, I know you're ready to go. I need until 5 o'clock tonight. So these are just the collaborative things that we do as a group, two important entities, the schools and the police department, both very important to this community, working together to make sure we're doing things the right way as they relate to safety. All right, go ahead. Every single administrator this year went through, this is just a small example, everyone, about what we're doing in 2023. We went to tourniquet training. There's something called Stop the Bleed. If you have an incident in your school building and it's under control, but you've had some tragedies occur, how do you stop the bleed? Like sometimes people in that situation, they will die because of a loss of blood. And so we all had tourniquets. We put them on each other. He made us tie them tighter than I ever wanted a tourniquet tied on my leg, but we learned how to do it. Those types of things, we are preparing ourselves just in case, hoping that we never have to use them, ever. All right. Just some tactics that he talked about. And obviously, I think he must have covered these when he was here. I think he was ill and someone else covered them. So go ahead, move through this, Noah. So the rescue task force is part of just in case something really goes bad and we need help from a SWAT team. They're all ready to go. They're doing it all the time. We just don't know. One of the things that will be a part of what we're talking about here is every single room in our district next year will have a safety bucket in case of a lockdown. Okay. I have one in my office. Tom has one. We met yesterday and talked and we said, let's each bring our bucket tomorrow. And we both forgot it. So he can bring it to the next meeting, but that bucket is fully equipped with things that kids need in a room.
Including tourniquets and I mean, even saltines, juices, things like that in case it's an extended classroom lockdown situation.
Yeah.
And the point that I guess I wanted to make also, and Marilyn, you're here, aren't you? So Marilyn has gone through, we've been working on this for a while too. We're going to be asking our Rotary Foundation, this club's one, as well as the district, to make a grant toward funding those safety buckets so that they are all in every room in our district by the time school starts in August.
Yeah.
And I think that's and they will be that'll give Rotary a nice presence that we're a caring organization. The kids will see that in the schoolroom.
And it's either really cute or really unusual that all of the buckets, the top of the buckets are actually a toilet seat, just in case we're in there for a really long time. So you can phrase that however you want, but I think it's like a cute little thing on top of the bucket. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and go through. I think we talked about this incident review and Perry talked about a lot of it. It's 8:20. Yeah, I would love any questions that any of you have related to anything I've talked about or our school district or safety.
I just want to thank you for showing up, and I just have to applaud the school board. I've worked with them closely for 8 years, and this is the first district I ever worked in that the board student first, what's best for the student. And that's the attitude here too. So thank you.
You're welcome. I want you all to know, and I'm not saying this because they're my bosses and they're in the room, but school districts, the team of a school district is really important for so many different areas. Student success, employee happiness. There are so many components, and this current school board, along with Dave Zuro, and I'm so thankful Dave was there and helped hire me and bring me to Hudson, and I'm indebted to him for that. This school board is a team that is student-based. It is a wonderful school board, and I want you to know that. If I didn't feel that way, I would avoid the topic and just wouldn't bring it up. That's how but I'm not afraid to say that because it's a group that meets a lot, talks a lot, and everything is about our kids. Joe?
Yeah, Dana, thank you so much for coming. We really do appreciate it. And what a great presentation. So many things I want to ask you about. We'll have to go to lunch and talk about all these, but I wanted to start with the Oxford comma, but I'm going to skip it. And even though you're an English guy, so we should get on that one. I have 4 sons. So when watching my sons go through school, I have 2 brothers. So, come from this long line of boys.
Okay.
I know that boys learn differently than girls. And that a lot of the learning setup is set up for girls. Sit still, listen, long periods of time. And that really is difficult for boys, especially young boys.
Yeah.
Are we dealing with that? Are we evolving in techniques in terms of style of learning and teaching?
Yeah, and you're welcome to come to the school buildings anytime. This district is really far removed from 8 seats in, 4 different rows. Our kids are not sitting in desks with their feet forward and their hands up on the desk. They are moving. Our middle school is nonstop action. We have what's called front porch learning at the middle school. It may seem unusual to you, but we have students in history class, English class, and science class that are all out on their room's front porch, and they're collaborating. There may be a social studies teacher out there who's also working with the science student because the topics are related that they're discussing. There are garage doors in our middle school that lift up and the kids will come out onto the front porch. So, our high school, you guys, I know of service learning. I know New Dimensions was here. These are kids and groups that just get out. They're out. We had 96 kids in service learning this year, and we got the total at the end of the year. All of their volunteer hours to Hudson and neighboring communities equaled to about $650,000 in pay had those kids received, funding. But we are further away from sitting in a desk, taking notes, and then taking a test 2 weeks later. We still have good lectures every once in a while, but we're a really active district. So thank you for asking that.
So thank you, Dana, for the presentation. And actually, your question, Father Joe, makes me think that maybe we'll need another month to just focus on curriculum and what's new and changed. I think that would be really fascinating. But make sure you put that Oxford comment in. So I was just going to point out a couple of things. One is the original presentation is online. So if anyone wants to see Chief Tabak's presentation of this, you can go on the Hudson website and see that as well. So if you Hudson City Schools, I'm sorry. Yeah, Hudson Schools.
It's on his website too. It's on the city website as well.
So the whole presentation.
Yeah.
There with it. So just want to note that. And then secondly, Dana, as you talked a lot about the supports for kids, people may not know that the main threat, if something does happen in a school, is a child or someone with a connection with that school. Very rarely is it happens, but very rarely is it just some random person coming off the street. And so that's why identifying kids who are at risk to themselves or to others is so critical. And I actually went to a presentation where school counselors down in, I think it was Kentucky, wrote a book about it. Kid came into her office early in the morning, realized he had come, they started talking that he had come to shoot up the school, but she sat with him, talked with him for an hour, and actually convinced him to give her the gun. And it's called The Shooting That Never Occurred. And, as you said, officers and all these responses work only after something happens. All these other actions are trying to prevent that upstream. So, and then the last thing I was going to just point out, so the threat of someone coming in on school, it's a high impact, something we worry about, but it's a very low probability, and the schools still have to worry about fires and tornadoes and a boiler blowing or kids getting injured or school bus accident. And so literally have to worry about all the other threats to health and safety that go on. So
Yeah.
we can't, people are often like, well, how come you don't spend more just on this? Well, we got to make sure we protect against all those other issues as well.
Yeah. Thank you, James.
I'd like to talk about the buckets just a little bit.
About buckets?
Buckets,
Okay.
yeah. Actually, last Monday, a week ago, Tom and I were at the library on my computer, making a pitch to the District 6630 to do a matching grant for us. And there are a couple of things that you need to know about that. Our timeline is really, really short because we're supposed to have the money before we really start the project. And we're kind of committed to getting this done before school starts. So what we know is that the bucket each is about between $70 and $80. And the most costly thing that's in it is something that is approved by the police department, and that actually is that tourniquet. When we did that presentation, we had the bucket there. And we had it completely disassembled and we showed them everything that's in it. And it really breaks down into three components. The first is the medical supplies, first aid kit that's really in there. The second is addressing nutrition for the kids, water, glucose, some things that are going to outdate, apple juice, saltine crackers, just something to get the kids through. And then the third was, of course, the restroom. When you're locked in a room that doesn't have its own ensuite, the reality is it's just the reality. So what we've done since that time is that we have made it past that first level of funding. But we also know that the Rotary District 6630 has got more grant requests than they've ever had. And they essentially deemed them all to be fundable. So we've got to be cognizant of that time frame. And so I'm here today to issue a challenge. We know the bucket itself is between 70 and 30. If every person here purchased a bucket, we'd be well on our way. If you purchase two or three for $250, what a deal. Okay, so we've made a commitment with Terry Bortnick, who runs our community service program, to have this be our service project for all of June and July. So we'd like to see what we can do. I made a commitment to them that we can move fast, and we have before. In May of 2020, when we had Chief Varnes here, Tom asked a very pertinent question at the end of his presentation about the unavailability of protective equipment. What can we do to help? And in 6 weeks, we had it done. And we had it done because we took it to the community and we took it upon ourselves to make sure that we could make it happen. So I'm issuing that same challenge. Let's make it happen. We know that we can get money out of the district, but we got to get it done before the end of July.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Somewhere. Yeah, around 250. Okay, and it's around 250. The other thing that we know is that we have a work component to this. We'll assemble them. The equipment comes in, and essentially we're envisioning an assembly line where we take the bucket and one person is responsible for one thing and they throw it in. So you pass it on down the road.
So the other question I have is cyberbullying. Bullying is a problem. We have a high rate of children killing themselves from cyberbullying across the nation. You went over bullying real quick, but what are we doing about cyberbullying?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And we're not going to control this until we better equip our families to understand what this is, to understand their children and their devices. Most of this occurs when the students are out of the buildings. We'll see some on occasion inside the building, but it's usually 11 o'clock at night when I, as an educator, don't have control over that student. So just our work with our families to know what apps your kids have, be aware of what's on their phone, like that has to be a part of this because they're with their families and away from us more than they're with us. While they're with us, we have education programs. We bring in guest speakers to talk about cyberbullying. The kids are aware of the consequences of cyberbullying. But just like bullying in general, it's hard to say, we're going to do this and it's going to take it away.
I know we can't take it away.
Yeah.
It's just that cyberbullying, even though sometimes it takes place when they're not in school, they're on their devices at school and it's still taking place even during the school day.
Yeah.
And that just becomes a crux of the problem. I also think part of the problem is we have angry children of parents who have no base to work from. We're in our 4th or 5th generation of children having children.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just still gonna leave us in a lurch trying to deal with that, because it's like you have to go back and re-educate the parents who have no education in order to educate the children.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really starting it off. It's our relationships with our families and equipping them. You know, we're believers that the family is going to raise a child however they choose, but we are really active in providing guidance with devices. We're big believers in putting the device away, having strict rules, parents knowing what apps are on their kids' phones. We put that support out there all of the time.
Thank you for your time.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
Our Rotobuck payout or raffle payout today is $10. Jackpot $264. So if you would pull a ticket and then read that number out for us.
Last time I pulled a board number, it worked out well for me.
Oh, yeah. Let's see if we do that again.
All right, here's the number 923607.
Such a good idea, too. All right. It's past our time, so have a great day. I'm gonna start singing out like I do church. Go in peace, run a circle, and you. Do something else.